For hundreds of thousands of years, humans thrived as nomadic egalitarian hunter-gatherers. It was only around 10,000 years ago that a few societies around the world began to experiment with sedentism, agriculture, and the hoarding of resources. These societies spurred feedback loops of growth, inequality, and environmental devastation, conquering and colonizing and domesticating everyone and everything in their path, causing the sixth largest mass extinction in the history of life on Earth. Today we live in a world that is a mismatch of our evolution in more ways than one. We feel disconnected, isolated, and powerless. Can we find our way back to a life that better matches how humans ought to live? What can we learn about how to live well from other cultures who've figured it out? Is there time to reverse our self-destructive trajectory? How can we reclaim our wildness? These are the themes of the Rewilding podcast. I'm your host, Peter Michael Bauer. You often hear me speak about my Rewilding 101 classes on the podcast. In this episode, I'm speaking with my longtime friend, Kennett, about our current project, which involves turning the class into an 8-part documentary film series and online companion course. We launched a Kickstarter on April 1st to fund the project. If you want to help propel the cultural rewilding movement to the forefront of public consciousness, please become a backer of our film series. You can find the link in the show notes or simply go to kickstarter.com and search Rewilding 101. This episode was recorded on April 1st on Instagram Live, so the audio isn't exactly what I thought it would be. That is to say, the quality of the audio in this recording is not the normal recording quality that I have in the podcast.
Okay.
All right. Are you there?
Let's see. I'm here.
Village video has arrived.
I have. You would think I would be better at getting on a live stream, but I've never done this before, so.
It's pretty obvious. No. You're usually behind the camera, not in front of it, so.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so I just did a little bit. I was talking for a while. It kind of seems to freeze up, so I closed it and restarted another one. This seems to be working a lot better.
This seems to be working. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I'll do a little introduction for you.
Okay.
Calen is an old friend of mine. He runs a production company called Village Video. They've done all kinds of really cool educational content, DVDs, things you could download. Look, he's got some cards right there. Yeah, he has like a shoemaking class he did with a really amazing shoemaker, a rocket stove class, bird language class, among other things. And then, yeah, he wanted to, for some reason, make a class video with me. Calen, why did you want to make a video with me?
Well, I mean, I think our core values as human beings are really aligned. I have vowed, as long as I possibly can, to make all of my work be something that aligns with what I believe and what I want to see in the world, and that I want my efforts to make the change in the world that I want to see. And that's like what I've always done. I could probably get real rich with my skills, making some billionaire richer, but I'd much rather hang out with Peter. And we've been friends for, I don't even want to say how long, but since high school, since the 90s, which is a while.
30 years.
30 years, yeah. Almost, yeah. And our friendship has gone through all of these sort of progressions, from watching The Crow and smoking clove cigarettes behind the theater, and to this. Yeah.
It's funny, I was just thinking about, there was like a week my freshman year where you stayed at my house and crashed in my room for the whole week. I don't even remember why. I think your parents were just out of town and you were like, I don't really want to be at home alone. Can I just come over? And my mom loved it when other kids would come over to our house and just stay there. So she didn't care at all. In fact, she would sew blankets for all of my siblings, different friends and stuff like that. So they would have their own blanket at my house or whatever. The week that you stayed over there was the week that we woke up to fire engines and stuff. And we looked out my smoke billowing from just down the street. And we walked down there, and the Hollywood Theater, the
Yeah.
building next door to it, was like on fire, and
Right. It was like an adult bookstore or something. Yeah. Yeah.
it's actually a strip club. They call,
Oh, was it? Okay.
they had like the fire code people come in, the fire marshal came in and like closed it down and gave them like a whole bunch of
Mhm.
like whatever citations and stuff. And then they were trying to fix it, and it was an electrical fire that burned the whole building.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. I remember that.
Like we grew up in the Hollywood district of Portland, which is funny because Hollywood filmmaking and stuff, and we're both
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
filmmaking, and you do that.
Mhm.
And yeah, our friendship just goes all the way back to that point. Why did you want to, you and I had been talking about doing an instructional video of some kind for a while. I can teach all kinds of different physical skills, like some of the programs that some of the educational content that you've generated with other makers and teachers has been
Mhm.
more of like physical stuff. What was it? And we had talked over the years of doing like a basketry course or something like
Right.
that. What was it specifically that made you like want to be like, I want to do your Rewilding 101 class. I want to turn that into educational content, video content.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the end of the world. Like, I think like since I was a kid, none of this made any sense. And, I know that I think we both read Ishmael around the same time. And I've been sort of expecting this, insane system that we operate under to like end anytime. And, that I don't have like a retirement account because it didn't make any sense to me, like why, Um, and, I think that it's the time, like, I think that the tools that this gives you to understand, to understand the the gears that make systems of social domination and ecology and all of these sorts of things work. I think understanding how systems work like gives us the tools that we need to be able to be resilient through changing times. We say that a lot. We wrote all this stuff together and resilient through changing times. But it's like, yeah, yes. but people need it. People are scared. Like nobody. My girlfriend's parents are, kind of normie suburban folks, and they're like, we need to garden. Like we need to like grow staple foods in our garden. Like I don't know if like this is gonna,
Totally.
yeah. So yeah, I just want help. I want to help save the world. I want to help be a part of like, creating an ecology and a society that can, can move towards alignment with the laws of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Um, I'm posting the Kickstarter link in the comments if anybody wants to check that.
Cool.
And then I'm going to pin it too. So,
Nice.
yeah, cool. I mean, it's interesting too to think about like, because I mean, being able to start a fire by friction or something like that is a skill that would be useful at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right. I think that overall, understanding how we got into this predicament is going to be the thing that is most helpful for people. And one of the things I think about too is like Daniel Quinn in his book, Beyond Civilization, he talked about like, creating a meme killer or something, like not like memes the way we think of memes today as like, lolcats or whatever they are now. I don't know. But meme is a cultural unit, something, the idea that humans, that there's one right way to live should be destroyed, and that civilization itself, as a culture of domination, people should understand what is bad about this so they don't try to recreate it. I mean,
Right.
It's really what it comes down to is like, not only is this a system, not only is rewilding like a way of seeing the world that helps transition to a different way of life from the one that we're living right now, an unsustainable way of life to a sustainable one. But also like prevents the idea or prevents people from claiming too much power later on.
Right.
Right. And
Yep.
one of the most important aspects of rewilding is like if humans don't learn from their mistakes and they just keep doing
Yep.
the same shit. And for me, yeah, that's what the Rewilding 101 is really about. It's like understanding how we got here so that we don't end up repeating the same things over and over again for future
Yep.
generations. I mean, not
Yep.
that we will necessarily even be able to get to this scale because fossil fuels will be burned through. Climate change
Mhm.
make it really hard to grow crops the level that we've been doing for the last 10,000 years. Materially speaking, it might be really hard to recapitulate or try to restart civilization in this way. But if it is materially possible, we want people to not do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a part of this too, for sure.
Colonized people tend to become colonizers.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's another element of why decolonization is an important aspect of rewilding too. Um, so I have a question for you. It's a personal question. It's off
Mhm.
topic. How did you get the keys to our high school?
Um,
And when we were teenagers, not like,
yes, yes. I kind of ran the theater a little bit. Like I worked for the school district while I wasn't allowed to get paid during school hours or whatever, but like I knew how everything worked. I knew how to make everything work. And I think, I was always calling the janitors to unlock stuff for me. And I think one of the janitors just gave me a set of keys once. He was like, you're obviously legit. Like uh, you're here all the time. You know how everything works. Like we're just going to make a copy for you.
it's amazing how much trust they would put in a child or a teen. Did you ever break that trust, Calen?
I think I've always been like I think I've always more or less been like people tend to trust me. Like when I was a kid, my friends' parents always wanted them to hang out with me more. Like a good influence on them.
See that. I feel like you are a good influence. Yeah. I remember this one time, it wasn't the actual keys to the classrooms and stuff, which you did have, but you also had like an Allen wrench set. And one day we were standing by the front door and you were like, watch this. And you took out a wrench and you like locked the like thing into the door. You just locked it and you showed me that it wouldn't open. And I was like, what? Unlocked it because somebody was coming or something. And I was like,
Right. No, yeah. I mean, I still like I have a set of lock picks right here. I like to like know how to like you know I like to understand how things work, but I don't want to cause any trouble. I just want to know.
years ago, when I was doing the Urban Scout stuff,
Yeah.
this is for the audience. I did a summer camp called the Urban Scouts Preemptive Post-Apocalyptic Summer Camp for Adults, and it was this sort of like urban survival simulation where we were like pretending that the apocalypse had happened. We were camping out in backyards, gathering firewood, foraging for food. There was one guy, another friend of ours, who showed up and he had killed a squirrel with his bare hands the day before the class started because he thought it was wounded or something, and he was going to mercy kill it. It was like running in circles. And he picked it up and like killed it on the sidewalk. It bit his hand and he ended up like, I don't think he went and got a rabies shot, but we all ate it and we're fine today. Well, I guess you probably didn't eat it.
I didn't eat it. I'm vegetarian.
Because in that class, this apocalypse class, you were the lock picking instructor for that. And I don't know if you remember that part of it, but we were going to break into my house as a steal canned food, not steal,
Right.
but pretend to be
Right.
canned food from a house
Right.
in a post-apocalyptic type environment. And today, you still teach lockpicking now at Echoes in Time in our
I do.
transition technology camp.
Yeah.
which I think some people were calling crime camp, but we don't.
They were. That's true. Oh, yeah.
Um,
But it's, the class is a lot about how to understand modern technology so that we can, in the event of a natural disaster or whatever, that we know how to make use of the things that exist in the world around us, solar panels and batteries and lights and radios and
yeah.
locks. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the things that's changes or that's different from, rewilding from something like primitivism is that we don't,
Mhm.
we, I think in rewilding, it's not just like getting rid of all the things. It's like utilizing what is available. It's almost like blending with solar punk in that way. Although I think solar punk is a bit more idealistic about the future. I think
Right.
rewilding has a lot of overlap in the transition from where we are at today to something else, utilizing what we have. It's there, utilize it to the extent that it will be helpful to make a civilization collapse a softer or smoother transition. And it's really important to
Yeah.
have those skills. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting because, like, I think you're somebody who has a lot of those and at most ancestral skills gathering because they're ancestral skills. They're not like thinking about modern stuff or transition. A lot of them don't have that. I think that's one of the differences of Echoes in Time and the influence of rewilding that is a part of that.
Mhm.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. Another question that I had for you was, who is your favorite invasive species and why?
So, so I don't know how long ago that was, 9 years ago or something. My sister had found an abandoned baby squirrel in her backyard, and she had a dog, so she was like, she put it in a box in a tree to like hope the mom comes back for it, and all that sort of stuff that you're supposed to do. You don't just take baby squirrels. They love everything when they're little. But after like 2 days of it being there, and I took it and fed it with a little eyedropper. And the thing, there's a law in Oregon. She's a eastern gray squirrel, and there's a law in Oregon that if you take an invasive species anywhere, you they have to euthanize it. Like if you take it to the Audubon or the vet or whatever. So I was sort of like stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I kind of didn't really have much of a choice but to become a squirrel mom and wake up every 3 hours and feed it heavy whipping cream mixed with puppy formula, and I still have some scars on my hands and a soft spot in my heart for eastern gray squirrels. Somebody made me a shirt that says, with a big squirrel in the middle, that says "No one is invasive."
Interesting thinking about like how there's a lot of talk lately too around like rethinking different aspects of invasion ecology, invasive species, and how like urban environments are different enough from the native habitat that like native species just don't thrive in urban contexts. And a lot of what we are thinking of as invasive species like the gray squirrel actually thrives in an urban context. Like you don't really see them
Right.
in the
Totally.
wilds of the Pacific Northwest.
No.
They don't leave the cityscape. They're
Right.
thriving here because for whatever reason, they're adapted to the environment that this place creates.
Right.
Whereas a lot of the native species just aren't. There was
They're
one time I was working years ago. I worked for News Channel 8 in Portland. They had a production division, and we made a little TV show called Your Northwest Garden with Ann Jagger. And it was she was like a retired from being a newscaster and had this garden show. She had a beautiful, huge garden in her backyard, huge wild space in Lake Oswego. And we filmed most of it, the little bits of it there. But there was one day where I was like 21 or something, and sort of pretentious naturalist. But I see an eastern gray squirrel chasing the Douglas squirrel, a smaller one, through the trees, because that's the zone where there's encroaching urban habitat into the wild habitat. And that's where you see the most sort of like contention between those species. And she was like, "Oh, look how cute it is. It's a mom playing with her baby. That's so cute." And I was like, Actually, it's a western invasive gray squirrel chasing a native, Douglas squirrel out of its habitat. And I think it's the mom. I think it's the mom playing with it. It's like, well, you can tell it's a Douglas squirrel because of the black stripe across its belly and blah blah blah. And then we're all like eating lunch, and everybody just shut up, and just nobody ever is just like eating in silence. And I just broke some taboo by correcting somebody, with the authority above me. I'm supposed to just shut the fuck up and sit there, I guess. But they were wrong about squirrels. I had to correct them.
Yeah, it makes me think. Mark Tollefson once said, which it's like this kind of like big moment. It's like nobody leaves home unless there are sharks, which means like people don't just up and leave everything that's comfortable and all of that sort of stuff, or they're forcibly brought to a place, that they're not comfortable with, and then they have to like make do in that environment. And then like learn to exist in an ecosystem that's not, that's foreign to them. And when Portland was developed, it was sort of modeled after East Coast cities, and none of the native squirrels moved into the cities because it wasn't their ecosystem. It was a foreign ecosystem. And so we imported squirrels from the East Coast into our cities, and then we judged them for thriving here. And it's sort of, that's a little bit what rewilding is like learning to become a invasive squirrel, like learning how to like exist in an environment that you weren't necessarily designed for and doesn't meet, that you were sort of forced into or brought into in some way.
Yeah, I think of it more like, Robin Wall Kimmerer in her book Braiding Sweetgrass, she talks about the idea of non-invasive naturalized species, like the process of naturalization, where a species that's not from an area integrates into it instead of invades it, right?
Right.
And I think that is a good metaphor also for rewilding. I also think that invasion ecology is just fucking stupid overall. Like and that there really isn't such thing as invasive species. Like there's just out of balance ecosystems,
Yeah.
Like invasive species are just species that are adapted for a different place and were put in a place where they either have a disadvantage and die, or they have an over advantage and overpopulate because there's no checks and balances because they didn't evolve in that environment. There's no species that is like, I am invading over the whole space because I'm an invader or whatever. That's like a weird cultural projection, onto plants and animals. That's absurd. I think it stems from like a colonial society that projects the idea of colonialism onto nature to make like justify itself as a colonial entity, I think that's more. I think invasive species is just a mirror for the colonizer perception of themselves, really, because you think about it too, like most of the invasive species that we think of as invasive because they are hyper adapted to environments and then become very prolific are adapted to disturbances created by colonial agriculture and urban development and all these other things. And so they, like, invasive species basically are species that are hyper adapted to live in the wake of colonization, and they didn't ask for this.
Yep. Yeah.
So, I love Dow Ryan's book, Beyond the War on Invasive Species, because it talks about how the hatred of invasive species was straight up post World War II Monsanto propaganda in order to fucking sell more chemical weapons. They were like, we need a new war to sell chemicals, and they wanted to sell more glyphosate. So they found invasion ecology, and they were like, this looks a lot like war. And they promoted the hell out of it as a way of selling more, Roundup, basically. And, poor dandelion ended up getting the face of invasive species when actually dandelions are naturalized, non-invasive. There is actually a native relative of the European dandelion that is like native to North America, but it's at a higher alpine. It's like an alpine dandelion, but they're
Mm-hmm.
so closely related genetically that they can cross pollinate. Um, and I just, yeah, I find that fascinating. So, while the European dandelion that we see in most cities and stuff is imported, if you go to higher elevation, there's this scrubby looking thing that looks like a scrubby little dandelion, and it is a native species to the Americas, or North America, at least I know of, and can cross pollinate. So it must have come over somehow, at some point, or they diverged, but they're not that different that they can't cross pollinate. They just exist in different what do you call it, like elevations, basically.
That's cool. There's this idea that like in psychology, if you if you have a trait, you're more likely to be judgmental of that trait in somebody else, you know.
Thing, yeah.
And there's really nothing more invasive than white people in America, and so we're like the most judgmental of invasive species. Like, like English ivy is never going to bulldoze a forest and build a Target or a Walmart, you know, like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, capitalism as a economy based on constant or endless growth is fundamentally unsustainable, and the only way to
Yeah.
keep it going is to continuously extract more and more and more. And invasive
Mhm.
species just live in the wake of that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
blame the society is to blame for it. I wouldn't. Yeah. Anyway,
You can scapegoat Himalayan blackberry.
yeah. Himalayan blackberry is not from the Himalayas, and technically it doesn't have berries. They're called drupes or drupals, drupes, I think. From Armenia. Its Latin name is Rubus armenius or Armenia. Rubus. Who cares about Latin names?
I knew that it wasn't from Himalaya, but I didn't know where.
Yeah, it's from Armenia originally. Um, yeah, so you were supposed to come up with some questions for me, but
I did. I didn't put him. I put him. Yeah.
kept them secret from me.
Yeah. Do you? Not on purpose. It just. Yeah. Didn't want to. I was taking an. I was taking a nap and I was like making notes on my phone as I like so. Oops. Sorry. I. When your urban scout persona, you used to. I remember you would hang out outside of coffee time and light people's cigarettes with a bow drill. Do you want to tell us some of the performance art that urban scout? Yeah.
When I was 16, I ran away from home to learn wilderness survival schools, dropped out of high school, to learn wilderness survival skills, went to various schools, took a Greyhound bus to, New Jersey, did a teenage program that was hosted at that time by Tracker School. But I had been learning to do bow drill by a friend of mine here, a mentor named Alex. And one day I was walking down the bus mall in Portland and I had my bow drill in my backpack, but I wasn't really thinking about anything. And somebody was like, "Excuse me, sir, do you have a light?" And I was like, "No." They had a cigarette in their mouth. And I was like, "Sorry, I don't." I kept walking. But then I was like, "Well, actually," and I turned around, I was like, "Do you mind waiting a minute?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I started doing a bow drill on the sidewalk on the bus mall. And this like crowd comes around. This is in like 1998. So this is before like Survivor, really, before Alone, before Naked and Afraid. Like people didn't know what this thing was. Like they had no context for what friction fire was, other than maybe like they'd heard that you could make a fire by rubbing sticks together or something like that. So yeah, this whole crowd gathered around. I ended up lighting a cigarette and I was like, damn, there's something to this. So I started doing it regularly. It ended up turning into this like persona that was like a character, performance art character that I created called Urban Scout. And I would go around town in character. It was basically like just me in a loincloth covered in mud. And I would go around with my bow drill and start fires for like, just light people's cigarettes for change, pocket change or whatever, and eventually I came up with like, some sort of preachy, like monologues that I could give about what later became Rewilding. But back then we called it preemptive post-apocalyptic anarcho neo-paleoism. Again, it's just sort of like a clown of rewilding, really, is what I was.
Yeah.
One of the things I would do is there were like teenagers that hung out at Pioneer Square. By this point, I was like 23 probably. And I would take the Lorax down to Pioneer Square and read the Lorax out loud to like the teenagers who were just like square rats or whatever, like hanging out there. And then at one time I went to Coffee Time, which was a 24-hour coffee shop in Portland at the time. And I was reading it there, and we hadn't seen each other in years. I mean, back then there was no social media really. I mean, Friendster was sort of right around that time. MySpace was sort of a glimmer on the horizon. Facebook didn't.
And you couldn't keep your phone number if you changed cell phone companies, or we didn't even have cell phones. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right around then is sort of, I think, when I got a cell phone. Then there were definitely early adopters of like cell phones, but I didn't have one for years. I think I got one when I was like 23. So probably around that same time was like the first time I got a cell phone. But yeah, so we didn't have any phone numbers. Of course, you move out of your parents' house, or the numbers change and stuff like that. So we hadn't seen each other or connected since high school, pretty much.
Right. It's like while I was away at college, we sort of lost touch with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, you moved to California for years. So
yeah,
and then I was there reading the Lorax to people, and you walked up and you were like, "Hey, what?" I'm reading the Lorax and shit. And, we just like reconnected, and I did a lot of crazy shit as Urban Scout. There was one time I went to the Holocene, which is a venue here. That's funny, the Holocene. Here's I did a gong show at Holocene, and there was another guy who sometimes he would play my arch nemesis, Suburban Scout. And so we went to the gong show, and I was going to light a fire on stage as my performance for the gong show. And I had a couple of drinks already, maybe more than a couple, and wasn't quite in the right state to get the bow drill going. And I had drilled a bunch of pre-holes in the board so that I could just take it and get it right away. Like, with a really primed board, you can get a hole in like 10 seconds or less, depending on how fast you go, So I wanted it to be, as fast as possible. But I was a little drunk, and it was dark, and I was putting the spindle in the wrong socket. So it was taking me a while. And the gimmick was Suburban Scout was going to come out from backstage and hit me with a chair, like WWF style, and be like, oh, no, actually, no, I fucked it up already. I forgot actually what happened. He comes out on stage and is like, I'm Suburban Scout. Urban Scout couldn't make it. He said he was all tied up. And he's like, I'm going to show you the bow drill. And then I come out from behind stage, and I'm like untying myself like he had me all tied up. And I like, hit him with the chair or whatever. And then he's supposed to punch me in the face. And he like actually punches me in the face because I don't move fast enough because I'm drunk. So I punched in the face. So I'm like, and I knock him out with a chair or something. And then I get the bow drill and I'm working on it. I put the spindle in the wrong socket. And now it's, there was all this action up front to keep the judges interested. And then they were sort of getting bored, and I got gonged. And let's talk to the judge about why you got gonged. And I was like, fuck you, I'm going to get this fire. And I just the fire and blew it into flame. And the audience the gong. And it just gonged me was this fucking douchebag hipster DJ guy that I fucking hated. I forget what his DJ name was. He was just like, one of those like, I don't mental, judging what you are to other people or whatever,
Yep. As you do in your early 20s. Yeah.
The best, like, stage performances of Urban Scout. I think it was just so ridiculous, But yeah, I didn't, there was sort of two Urban Scouts. There was like the performance artist Urban Scout. And then later when I started blogging, I like took the name Urban Scout for my blog, but it was sort of a different thing because it was the character performance art piece of Urban Scout.
Yeah.
And then there was like the blogger of Urban Scout, which was like me writing incendiary things to people and it wasn't really the performance character. It was kind of like this other thing. So there was really almost two,
Mhm.
and they kind of got conflated in that way. Yeah. Anyway, I prefer
Yeah.
the character to the blogger. The character is more fun and interesting and dynamic. The blogger character was just sort of like a pen name and muse, specific writing muse,
Mhm.
a particular voice of in the literary form.
Mhm. Yeah, they're like a character arc of
Totally. Yeah.
Urban Scout into Peter Michael Bauer.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. Or Peter to start with. I,
Everyone's wearing a different mask.
yeah. Do you remember like the moment that everything clicked and like you were like, oh, this system doesn't make sense?
Yeah, ironically, or not ironically, but funnily, I guess, funnily, is that a word? I
It is now.
was watching Terminator 2. Arnold Schwarzenegger, titular character, says, it's in your nature to destroy yourselves. And I remember hearing that and being like, that's bullshit. It is not in my nature to destroy myself, you know? And I was like, why is that a thing that people believe? Where did that come from? I don't care if it takes me 50 years to figure out why. I'm going to figure it out. And then I read Ishmael and it was just all there.
There we go.
Look, there it is. It's all right there. Um, so that was like, I think, yeah, reading, watching the Terminator, having that sort of like, I'm going to figure this out. And then talking to a couple people and being like, why do we believe this? And one of my best friends, Lisa, she had just finished reading Ishmael and was like, here. And she gave me Ishmael. And another friend had given me a Tom Brown Jr. book. And I read that. And Lisa and I exchanged books and then, ended up moving to Wilderness Awareness School and going to New Jersey together and a bunch of other stuff. The second thing, after that was really like the like moment in my life that catalyzed me to do Rewilding 101, to be an orator, to be an educator of this type of content, is Daniel Quinn's book, The Story of B, which, like, I don't want to spoil the ending for people who haven't read it, but the very end of that book is basically like, these ideas now, we're handing them off to you. It's now your job to go out in the world and be this person and be the message. And I just took that. I mean, I read that when I was 16 and I was just like, this is my life's purpose. And, however I go about it, obviously I've changed mediums as an artist, as a performance artist, a writer, filmmaker, whatever. But the medium changes, the message is essentially the same. And I've just had a really hard time writing for the last decade because I feel like I'm more of an orator and an actor. That's what I wanted to do as a child. I wanted to grow up and be an actor. And then when I was in high school and read all of these books, I was like, what the fuck is a high school diploma going to be worth? Going to college is a waste of time. Civilization is going to collapse. I'm going to drop out of high school and run away from home to learn all this shit, because if I don't, then I'm going to die. And of course, civilization didn't collapse. So I just started doing performance art.
Right. The collapse of civilization looks like expensive gas and bad food.
And fascism.
And fascism, yeah. Yeah, I'm a little disappointed.
All are.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about the progression of there's a big question just sprung on you. Sorry about that, but can you talk about like the progression of your ideology, like from the more activist, I mean, we're both activists our whole lives, but like the sort of angsty activist to like where you are now and how your perspective has changed over time?
Yeah, I think I'm still an angsty activist. I think of it as like a telescoping lens as opposed to getting rid of something or changing. Like, to me, it's like I telescoped,
Yeah.
and I still have that angry activist part of me. I wouldn't even call it tempered. I would just say it's more about strategy and choosing strategy. Um, I also think that there's just a certain level of like you are who your friends are, and there were people that I was hanging out with who were too chicken shit to do some of the things that I would do, and they would egg me on to do things, egg me on to say things, egg me on to post incendiary things. And then they egged me on to do it, and I got a reaction. It's sort of like the algorithm, where controversy hates engagement. I think like maybe from an ego sort of standpoint, as the Urban Scout blogger, not the Urban Scout character, but as the Urban Scout blogger, I definitely burned a lot of bridges in terms of my content, mostly because I was just trying to be controversial. And, that muse was and is still an asshole. I mean, I have access to it. I just don't, um, just never went away. He whispers in my ear. I just translated into Peter Michael Bauer instead of Urban Scout the blogger. But yeah, I mean, there's multiple, as an artist, I feel like I have multiple muses and to different ends trying out different things. So I feel like there was a level of intensity that is important. I think it's important to have angsty voices and feel that emotion for things. It's not necessarily the most constructive when you're trying to build something together. It's one thing, to vent, right? Venting is important. People bearing witness to the venting, people bearing witness to the pain and suffering and anger that exists within civilization is really important to experience. And it can also shut people down. It can make people react offensively. There's all kinds of things that it can do that are maybe, I don't want to say constructive, because I think there are constructive elements that can come out of angst. But it's not a Trojan horse. It is, angst tends to be direct confrontation type strategy. The carrot or the stick kind of thing, whatever.
Yep.
And I think it's just a matter of strategy. I got tired of it, and I think in part because it's not me, because it's just a mask that I wore. I mean, it is me. It is one of my masks. It is one of my muses. But when you put that on and it fully becomes you, and then people think that is all of you, what makes you a person is that person or that mask, but not all of the other aspects of who you are. It was draining, and I'm a very sensitive person on the inside, and I think just the kind of the vitriol that you get put back at you when you act on the world in a particular way. I just couldn't fucking handle it. I mean, there's people who can handle that kind of intensity. And I feel like it's not that I've grown a thicker skin over time. I think it's more that because I think that's a weird, it's more like Aikido or something, where I can like take it and throw it, leverage it away from myself or dodge it, as opposed to just like let it bounce off me like I have some big strong chest or some thick skin or something like that. For me, it's just sort of like letting those things wash away, as opposed to like letting them hit against me and confront them head on, which is why I switched over. And in part it was because I wanted to build something locally, and Urban Scout, the blogging character or blogging persona that I had burned some bridges in town, and I realized I needed to, just change my attitude and find another muse within me to do that. And that's what I used to create Rewild Portland. So I have like, Peter Michael Bauer is sort of that was my film name back when I was like making film, working in the film industry. And, when I was a kid, and I would put that as my name or whatever, because on IMDb, like, in the director stuff, you have to, once one person takes your name, you have to change it. So I was always just Peter Michael Bauer. So when I kind of decided to be more of a public persona of my own making, in a professional type of a context, that's sort of the mask or persona that I embraced in that regard as a community organizer. And I started Rewild Portland. And then, Urban Scout likes to come out from time to time. And in 2015, there was some of these online influencers who were, co-opting cultural rewilding and turning it into a fucking sales pitch for their product line and trademarking the name, which is antithetical to the whole fucking project of cultural rewilding. And so Urban Scout kind of came back out a little bit and I went after them. And then I was just like, you know what, actually what I need to do is just start teaching again and start being online more. And so that's when I started, teaching my Rewilding 101 class. That's when I re-put out my book, Rewild or Die. And yeah, so, I had Rewild Portland, but just continued to sort of also be a presence online as an influencer. Well, I fucking hate that word, but, as a, I prefer the term catalyst, as a catalyst for cultural rewilding, and yeah, I mean, people for the last 15 years since I wrote Rewild or Die are constantly asking, hey, when are you going to come out with your next book? And I've been writing like 5 books simultaneously, but I have attention problems and, focus problems. And I also work trying to do this other stuff. And I'm an orator and a collaborator. So writing is actually really challenging for me because it's something I have to do alone. And I don't have people to bounce ideas off of and like sketch comedy or sketch building or collaborative storytelling like what we've done in our Kickstarter video and what we'll be doing for the Rewilding 101 film project by converting my 101 class into a more of a film and collaborative project between the two of us is something that is like actually more my speed. I love the collaborative aspect. I love filmmaking, and I think both you and I have a grasp on that. I mean, obviously, I stopped doing any of the technical stuff ages ago, so that is your wheelhouse. And if people are watching our Kickstarter video and you're like, wow, the production value of this is super high, the majority of that is because Calen knows what the fuck he's doing. And the other element of that is that I'm also a good editor and have an eye for certain things, so I can give feedback in the editing process and stuff like that. But the production quality and the value really comes down to your skill set. So I feel like it's a really good pairing between the two of us.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like we both, are passionate about things and we have like very complementary skill sets and like, we understand the art and craft of storytelling and like, we'll like bicker about a thing, but then, oh no, you're right. And then like, and then it's like, it's this whole, there's like a constructive conflict in there a little bit when there needs to be. And like, and it makes it better and better and better. And, it's like, yeah, I think this Kickstarter video, I think is one of the coolest things I've ever made. And I think it's partly because of like that collaboration that we have, that it's, and, sometimes I have motivation problems and sometimes you have motivation problems, but one of us is always motivated, like, so, it's, and we'll get the other one fired up too. And so, yeah, it's pretty exciting. I'm really excited about the video and the Kickstarter and the project that we're going to do. I think like we're going to put every penny that people give us into making an incredible production. We'll have a better travel budget or be able to spend more time with, whoever, wherever that is, and, be able to do the wild, crazy, fun things and create, more of an opportunity for people to learn and be entertained and feel, a little bit, light about the end of the world. The beginning of the world, yes. The beginning of whatever's next. Yeah, I like that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to this, everybody, and got something out of it. If you want to help fund our project, you can go to our Kickstarter page. Link is in the comments, or any of our social media. All of our stuff has links to it. You should, at the very least, go watch our video. It's pretty funny.
Go watch the video. It's good.
Kind of outline of all of the chapters of the Rewilding 101 series, and each one has its own little sort of sketch comedy or skit little bit in it. And yeah, thanks, Calen, for all that you do. I'm excited for this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For listening in.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Rewilding Podcast. If you felt moved or compelled by it, please check out Kickstarter.com and search Rewilding 101, or you can find a link to our Kickstarter in the show notes. Help us bring rewilding to a much wider audience. The time to do this is now.